Welcome to the Living Consciously TV show, coming to you live from our Colorado studios. I'm your host and moderator, Coach Steve Toth, and our theme for today is understanding your money puzzle. And so let me introduce you to our guest and also our cast. And our guest today is Dr. Lorraine Eady, and she is a money and relationship coach, and she is joining us from Georgia, the beautiful South.
I'm back from my garden, and it's wonderful.
Thank you. And on your very right, we have Jamie Lerner. She is joining us from Chicago. I was going to say our Chicago studio, but might as well be.
Hello.
Like a news anchorman. All right. So, and we also have in the middle. The ladies are on top, and Jim is on the bottom there. I don't know what that means. But in the middle, we have our beautiful Nina Antiverderosa, and she's joining us from Las Vegas. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right.
Can't wait to talk about money.
Me too.
You're in the right spot.
I think so.
And on the bottom there, we have Jim Gillette, and he's joining us from San Antonio. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Howdy.
Howdy.
That
All
was
right.
a Texas high.
Cool. All right. So for the first half hour, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be exploring in a dialogue what happens when we don't understand our money puzzles, really what happens to us and to our lives. How do we show up? And then in the second half, we're going to be having a dialogue about what are some of the tools that the cast and also our guests have used and different modalities to help people how to solve this money puzzle. So I am so excited, I cannot wait. So no more waiting. My first question to Dr. Eady is, let's first maybe explain to our viewers, what is this thing that we call the money puzzle?
You know, the money puzzle, it's interesting because when I put my website together, it felt like a puzzle. And so when I think about money and I think about a puzzle, I think, how do we put our money together? What is it? What are the different pieces that we need to put together to make this thing called money work? So the money puzzle is different aspects of our finances, different aspects of how we become wealthy, and we put those together to create that which we want in our lives.
Got it. So I think also what I'm hearing is that money can be something that we also think about, handle, and the way we're being about money is in a conscious way, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So when we are not being conscious about our money, then what are we doing? What's happening to our lives, like in your experience in regards to maybe yourself? What happened? Have you experienced in your life, like before you had all these breakthroughs about money and about the money puzzle, what was going on in your life, Dr. Eady?
What wasn't going on in my life? Well, you know, it's interesting because I started out, you know, our family has a lot to do with how we handle money. So there wasn't much talk about money in my family. And when we did talk about it, there was this playing, you know, everyone had to take a part in, I knew about money, I didn't know about money, I could have money, I couldn't have money, and I'll be clear about that. An example, I would go to my stepfather and I'd say, can I have some money? And he would say, well, why don't you go ask your mother? And well, I would have asked my mother. So then I'd go to my mother and she'd say, well, did you ask your stepfather? And so I decided, you know what? I'm not going to ask anybody for anything. I'm going to go out and make my own money. So at the ripe old age of 12, I decided to start a business. And it was a cleaning business, because what can you do at 12 years old? Well, you could deliver papers and things. But I started out cleaning people's homes. And I decided I wasn't going to ask for anything from anybody, which is an interesting belief that I began to develop, so, which impacts my life in many ways, because as you grow older, then you don't ask for the things that you really need and want, such as support and help. Mm-hmm. So, but it started out with this idea about money and asking for money and feeling as though I got the runaround with money. Uh-huh. So there was no clarity.
You were being transferred from department to department.
Yeah.
And you said, "The heck with this! I'm just going to go do it on my own." So it would be great if we could just go around the cast and maybe everybody could share something from your lives. What were you learning from your childhood about money? What were your parents teaching you? Who would like to go next?
I'll go. What I learned about money, and I feel blessed to have learned this, is that it is like energy, and it flows, and that when we're open to receiving it, we do. And the responsibility that I learned early on is to be responsible for money, is to appreciate the things that you have and to share with everyone else in your life and in your immediate life and in your bigger life. And so that has always been my uncomplicated message about money, which has been helpful for me because I think I have a pure vibration in terms of finances and money, and I think I'm in a good place to assist other people just in trying to get to that purer place. So I had a different kind of communication, but I think it was good. It was good.
So what I'm hearing is that you never had any challenges about money when you were growing up?
I think that specific conversation at home did not come up. Those challenges did not occur. I had challenges outside of my home with other people because they did not get the same kind of communication about money as I did. So my challenges come from more dealing with the outside world than it's how do I translate what I know into the bigger reality. So that sometimes that is challenging.
So I'm curious, Jamie. So when you were a child, when did you figure out on your own that what money was? Like, how old were you?
Well, it's interesting because I always had like little jobs. Like I always wanted to work. So I worked like shining shoes at a barber shop, and I worked created these little businesses. But I didn't really understand like this work in terms of like receiving money. It was just like I wanted to work and I received this money, and it was just this nice little, I don't know, exchange. And with my money, I bought things and gifts for others and things I needed, but there wasn't stress around it, and it didn't feel hard, and it wasn't a struggle. So I had a really interesting kind of exchange with my family about money pretty early on. And I must say, as a result of that, we're all, and there's 5 of us, we're all very entrepreneurial and really feel like we could work in any capacity. We're all educated, and so we have different challenges, but that's not it. Okay. The financial stuff isn't it.
Okay, got it. Okay, so Jim wasn't smiling throughout this whole thing, so I'm going to pick on him next.
Well, I have a similar story in that I started working early. My family, we didn't have a lot of money. I think the only allowance I ever got was $1 a week, and it never got higher than that. So I just sort of knew if I wanted to do things and have money, I'd have to go out and work. And I remember riding the bus downtown and getting my health card. And my first job with a company was with a chain of drugstores that had the soda fountains, and downtown, these were very busy places. So I was a busboy and a dishwasher, and occasionally they let me out front and I could make sandwiches and things like that. But I always worked, as an usher and different things. Bought my first car with my own earned money. So for me, it didn't feel tight. At the scale I was living in, I always had enough. In fact, I always had more than my friends because I was the one that was always working, and I worked through college. It felt very natural. But then I got into the field of psychology, and I started moving away from business. And some years later, when I got back into business, I had to reorient. And I remember reading Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. So I made I wrote, I didn't know anything by then, but he told me to write a 5-year plan, which I did, and it came true. And he says, write it big, don't limit yourself. So I had some aspirations of either owning my own company or being a partner, and I was this ex-psychology guy that had been a counselor with poverty kids, and now I was in LA, and I actually did that. So I've always sort of worked towards my goals, and it's always worked out for me.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jim. All right, so what about you, Ninan? Did you have any challenges? And again, just want to remind the cast that what we're looking for here in this conversation is not all the fantastic, positive experiences that you have with money. We're actually looking for the opposite.
The challenges,
and I know we love to resist this stuff, but let's just move through it, okay? So Nina,
my challenge was we never spoke about money. I can't remember my family ever talking about money when I was a young lady, and it wasn't a question of money. It was just we had the clothes, we had the food, and never an abundance of it. And I think I got a shilling. I'm from England. So we got a shilling a week, which was not very much. I don't even think that was $1. I don't know what the equivalent of that was. But it was, and that's all we got. And sometimes we didn't even get that. But we never had this conversation of money. So when I left home at 16, I happened to have I think it was about £5, which was probably about $8 or something at that time. And I actually left home with that amount of money. And I think about it now and think, where on earth did I get that from? And why would I do that? But I did it. And I wasn't afraid, and I have always worked very hard, always worked, and I'm still doing that. But when I was a little girl, I was 16 when I left home, and I was doing, I think it was like 20 hours a day. I would get up at 5 o'clock, walk to my first job, which was at a hotel because I had no experience. And so I had to do something that didn't need any experience. And I'd work there sort of all morning, then I'd come back for lunch, then I'd come back for dinner, and then after that dinner break, I would get a taxi or get a lift or whatever I could get to get it down to my other job, which was a cashier at this ballroom, and work there till 2 o'clock in the morning, because although the ballroom will close at 12, we had to clean it up afterwards. The boss was a little, so they were cleaning as well, and it was like, there was always this hard work, but to me, it wasn't the hard work, it was achieving what I wanted. And I knew that money was going to set me free to where I needed to go and what I needed to do. And I think that's always been that way, and it's never been a struggle, because I've never resisted working. So it's sort of, but money has been important to me from those days to be able to get what I needed to go up the ladder. And I just knew that if I worked really hard, but it wasn't a struggle in my mind, it was just an automatic thing to do. So I can't say it was hard or not hard, or easy or not easy. It was just something I had to do to get where I needed to go.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm going to share a couple of them with you and with the viewers. And the second one, I actually have never shared with anybody, so brace yourself. So the first one is, most of you probably already know that I grew up in a communist country. And the story I made up about money is that it wasn't worth anything. And it really wasn't worth anything because it was true. In a communist country, money has basically no value because you don't get much of it. And the communists were absolutely making sure that everybody just had enough of the money so that they could drink and they could eat. And as long as we had enough of that amount of money, everybody was pretty decent. I wouldn't say happy, but people weren't complaining because they weren't hungry and they had access to drinking. So the second one I actually have never shared with anybody, and maybe this will also help Dr. Eadie to identify some things about the story of money. So the second one happened to me really close to when I already had one of my foot out of the country. But just a few months before I left the country, I escaped Hungary. My father had won the jackpot on the lottery. And my father and my mother did not share any of the money with me. And that devastated me. It's like I made it up that that they didn't love me, and that it just made me even more angry. And it just really put the final thing on the cake, that I just said, okay, so that's proof to me that, you know, I'm not loved, I'm not wanted. I'm going to get the hell out of this country because I probably won't make it anyway if I stay. So those are my two stories. So now what I'd like to ask Dr. Eadie is to see if she can make any sense in terms of our money puzzle from anybody that on the cast shared with you, Dr. Eadie, and also with the viewers. Can you make any sense of any of this in terms of what it means?
Well, you know, as each of you was speaking, one of the things I thought is that we each have a journey, and that journey takes on many different forms. And so for you, for Jamie, it was one. There was no struggle. It was effortless regarding money. And for each one of us, we have to grow, and we have a path. So that's what struck me, that we each have a very unique path. Whether it's money, whether it's relationship, we have a very unique path. But also that work was very strongly related to money, and a sense of abandonment, a sense of fulfillment, a sense of self-esteem and self-worth, and working hard. So values, the beliefs that we begin to put together, and the values that we have in relationship to money. So I heard that for each one of us, and how those values have been played out in our life, even till today.
All right, awesome. Now, what's also interesting about the story that I shared is after I escaped and I went to Italy, I made a phone call to my parents, and my mother was talking to me, and she was trying to entice me with money and to come back home. And I said no to it. And I basically said to her, you know what, I don't need your money, I'm just going to make my own, which is kind of similar to what you were sharing, Dr. Eadie, at the beginning of the show. It was very much similar. I said, I don't need the hassles. I don't need the drama. I'll just go make my own. Do you
think that that when we become so independent and want to do it ourselves, that we can have a tendency to not be open to receiving then the abundance at the times when it is going to be flowing to us, and that comes up as a kind of a secondary issue?
Well, that's one of the things I mentioned early. When you shut yourself down that way, you become independent, not interdependent. So you don't learn to depend on other beings, other individuals, to develop your wealth. And in any aspect of your life, you become self-contained and limited in what you do. And absolutely, Jamie.
So can you share with us a little bit how you help people create that balance between wanting to be independent and make their own money, but also be open to receiving the abundance that is what they're wanting for themselves? How do you do that?
Absolutely. That's a great question, because one of the things is really about, for the most part, it's about enough. So the idea of having enough and being enough, because the message I got, and I heard the same thing with Steve, underlining issue was there's not enough. And so the story I begin to tell myself, and I heard with Steve, is that I'm not good enough. So one of the ways is really to help to empower people to know that no matter what, this is a universe where there's enough, and that you are enough. So that's a real core issue for people to work with and to work on, that issue of being enough. And once they start to really get that they are enough, and it's kind of, I don't want it to sound woo-woo, but it's really magical because a shift starts happening. There's a paradigm shift that happens when we know, I'm enough. This is enough. What I have is enough. I don't need all of these things, because this need to get more and more is internally a feeling of lack and scarcity.
This is interesting. What it's bringing up for me is because, I already described how I started out with this 5-year plan, and I worked very hard in the early years, say the first 3 to 5 years. But then I shifted into, it almost became magical. I didn't have to work hard. I just did what I did, and the sufficient money came to me. Now, my little twist on this is when once in the early 90s, I fell into a dip, and I had to work my way back out of that. But it's like in reverse. After you're already believing and living within the magic of it, sometimes you fall out. And my tendency is to look within myself for what are the elements of myself that I've created these blocks, rather than ever going back to thinking that I need to write another plan and work hard and do this and that. So that's where I think we have to look, and I think that's what you're saying, Dr. Edie, is that's where we need to uncover the blocks that and combine. If work hard is appropriate, of course, do it, but there's blocks within that stop us.
What is limiting? Go ahead.
The limiting beliefs that we have.
Yes, yeah.
What do you mean?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What do you,
I don't want to talk.
Jim? What did you mean by? I'm curious. What did you mean by falling into a dip? What does that mean?
Oh, meaning, well, just the details of it were that I had a company that I had run successfully through several recessions, and my sales volume and business activity always went up. I sort of had an invincibility feeling about myself. So the first time I ran into a deep recession, particularly in my market, and particularly with my vertical markets, it happened to be financial services and aerospace in the late 80s in California, I had to shut my company down. I went through periods of having 2 other companies that didn't do well. I finally took a job, and this is interesting, to redeem myself. I felt ashamed that I had let it all go like that. And I took a company, I had a court-appointed and approved position with a company in bankruptcy. And I worked to save about 80 jobs. I pulled everything back together. I worked very hard, but I felt like I was on a mission. And so I sort of put myself back together, and then I started another company, and I was okay again. Then I built it back up. But the dip for me is when the magic quit working, And so then I was sort of left a little bit like adrift, and I had to start putting things back together. So that's what I mean by a dip. You might say hard times. I had to shut my company down, and then I had to build it all back up.
Okay, got it. Thank you. What were you?
What I wanted to ask a question, and this is pertaining to being married. And when I got married, my husband didn't have much money, and neither did I, but he was brilliant. And we made a lot of money. But I wasn't concerned about any of the money that he made. And I had no bank accounts, I had no credit cards, I had nothing. And none of that concerned me, and this concerns me about other women out there, that to be concerned or to understand, because I didn't do that. And I regret it right now. My husband passed away, and there was a whole big mess. But at the same time, as a woman, younger, when I first started out being married, I did not concentrate on the consequences of maybe 10, 20, 30 years later, mine happened to be 30 years later, that nothing was in order. And how am I going to blame my husband who passed away? But I'm really sort of saying, well, why didn't he have everything in order? But then why didn't I have everything in order? Why do a lot of women do this? And I think it's something we need to really look into, that we don't do, and we need to look at that, because I got myself in an awful mess.
Excuse me. That is so wonderful that you're saying that, because, I'm thinking about when I've been married 3 times, so I know about money and relationships.
I'm only once.
And each time it helps me to grow. And I have to say, each time I was looking for Prince Charming. I was looking, to be honest, I was looking for someone to take care of me. And I think women, depending on when you were born, but we all have that desire to be taken care of. I'm sure with men it's very different, not financially, but for women it is. There's those messages that we get very early on that, we're supposed to be taken care of. So that's something. And, for the most part, I always made more money than my husband. So, and then there was this whole issue of being angry because I was making more money. However, I came to really understand, and it went through this whole process and how important it is. I came through a whole line of women who were really self-sufficient. My mother worked. She depended on herself, really. She left my father when we were young. She worked very hard. She was a woman before her time. She was in the Teamsters Union. She worked 40 years in the same place. And do you know, she still had that underlying issue of she wants a man to take care of her. So today, you see younger women are much more, this new generation of women are much more educated about finances. Yes. However, we have to be really careful about the emotional component that we have and those messages that continue to be there about we should be taken care of by someone else. And for women, the best gift we could give ourselves is to learn how to take care of ourselves, because that is so attractive to men.
Yes, and I also think another interesting issue has come up as a result of all this is that men are feeling displaced because women are so financially capable right now that we don't actually need men in order to take care of us. And I think that it is created...
Hallelujah.
Well, yes and no, because I think it's been complicated for men to kind of figure out where they fit in.
I'll address that. As we're sitting here talking, for me, in the development of myself, in a rounded, complete development, I've certainly gotten in touch with more of my feminine side, we might say, the full circle, yin and yang. And so I was, as you were talking, Dr. Edie, I was thinking, I guess as I'm getting more in touch with my feminine side, I would be perfectly happy if a woman took care of me. Now I've always been the primary earner, but I'm pretty relaxed. I would be fine if now I have a wonderful, lovely wife who teaches at the college level, and I make a lot more money than she does. But if somehow she started making a lot more money, wouldn't bother me at all.
I think that's the trend of men anyway now.
Yeah,
that's how they are. And even the younger men, they look at a woman and say, I'm not keeping her. Oh, we're going to split it down the middle. And it's become very much of she does her thing, I do my thing. But I think us women did that because we became so independent, which is great.
Yeah, I like it. I love the
bet you do.
of women. Yeah, why not?
But I think the important word is need that you mentioned, Jamie. That we don't need men. And that brings up a lot of different, depending on what your values are, do you need men? we want them in our lives.
Of course.
And we can invite them differently
Absolutely.
than depending on them in that way. So do I want a man in my life? Absolutely. Would I be willing to take care, like Jim said? Yes, but that whole piece is such an important piece.
Yes, I think you're right.
To that point. Mm-hmm.
I think we're not automatically, we need each other. I think, it's
That's a good way of looking at it.
We need each other. We have respect, we need each other. And I think we mustn't lose that respect, regardless of money or no money, or who's got more, who's got less.
Absolutely.
I think that beautiful conversation that you can have that doesn't cost money, to have that lovely conversation between each other of exactly what is going on and how it's going on, what you're feeling, I think is one of the most important things, regardless of money.
Well, also the other thing that's happened too is that the prenuptial has become pretty commonplace now, no matter how much money anyone has. And it's very interesting. Yeah.
I signed one 30 years ago.
And most people are now, regardless of how much money they have, and most people who don't even have much money, it just seems to be now more commonplace, which I think is interesting.
Well, I think the interesting thing about this conversation is that the social norm has been that the role of the men is, and I'm speaking for myself, of course, is being that we must take care of our wives and our families at all costs. And we have to be responsible, and we have to go out and generate income to make sure that our families are taken care of. Now, it's that way, I think, in most cultures, but that's shifting and changing because of this conversation that we were just having. And I'm just wondering, what impact does that have, that these social norms are changing? What kind of impact does that have on our society and on our couples? Because you can say that it's becoming no longer the norm or the truth, that it's always the man that goes out and makes all the money and takes care of the family. Matter of fact, there are many relationships and marriages that we know about where the man stays home and takes care of the kids, and the woman goes out and works. So what effect does that have on our future? How is that shaping our future?
I think it strengthens our society and culture. By allowing women to fully develop and express themselves, y'all selves, and gain equal status, we as a society, it's like now we're operating on all cylinders, And by the way, my first marriage, my wife and I agreed that she would stay home with the children. So I decided I had to make as much money as a two working couple would be making, because I would be covering the whole thing. And that was, it just made total sense. Whereas now, particularly the younger women, I just think we as a society are just strengthened and enriched by this development. Men are learning and women are learning, and the mutual respect and the way we all work together as equal beings first, then male, female, all of that. But we're together as beings, and I enjoy it, and I think it strengthens everyone.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, too, it's also forcing men to become a little more evolved because they're needing to bring something else to the table now other than,
Absolutely.
The paycheck. So I think it's helping them kind of like tune into themselves and start to think in terms of how that they can become more emotionally whole and more emotionally expressive and more emotionally present and more emotionally available. And that's lovely.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, Jamie.
I think what we need to understand with the younger generation is they don't know what our generation was, what we did when we were, what the man did and what the woman did. So they're growing up into something very normal to them, that the woman's working and she takes care, and he works and he takes care. And it's kind of, if they get married and they have a divorce, it's fine. And if they stay together, it's fine. So it's a completely different way of looking at life as a young person than what we were. So we're always sort of, because we've got all those years ahead of us, of them. And so they don't even know what we went through or what happened. So they're just living their lives with what they think it is and how it is. And I think they're very content and very happy how it is, but we criticize it.
Okay, great. So I've noticed growing up here in the United States that there are two taboo conversations in general in this country. One is about sex, and the other one is about money. Now, I think we all know that both of these conversations are largely responsible for the 55 to 60% divorce rate in this country, right? So why is it, Dr. Eadie, that people are unwilling to talk about money in their relationships, and what can we do as the cast and as our guests to help our viewers to have a change in their mindset in terms of how they show up in their relationships?
Wow. You know, one of the things I've learned is that from the couples that I've worked with, that they're more willing to talk about sex than they are to talk about money.
Yes.
And yeah, they are. I mean, yeah. So that, you know, money is so secret, and there's a whole aspect that they call financial infidelity, because people are so impacted by money, the power that that has in their relationship. So the important part of couples and relationships coming together is really a dialogue. And Jamie, you mentioned about the prenuptial we were talking about. I think the prenuptial gives the couples and relationships an opportunity to start that dialogue early,
so
even before they get married. And that's an important piece, that we become comfortable. We bring so much baggage with us, so many individuals, not everybody, but for the most part, the norm is we bring so much baggage around money with us. Our family didn't talk about money. We don't know how to do it. So we can see, based on that, what happens with our economy. I mean, so much of things were hidden. And I think we're evolving, and things have happened for a good reason. Even though it doesn't feel good right now, we're being empowered. We're being, to some degree, forced to talk about money, to talk about what it means to us, to talk about the impact it's having in our lives. We have to talk about it.
I would like to know, too, if you have clients that where they are apologizing for actually being in a place where financially they are successful and they're uncomfortable with that. And I think that's an important issue to bring up, that, you know, how do you get comfortable about with yourself, about bringing in the abundance and then owning it?
And for the most part, people will make other individuals who are financially solvent to feel guilty about being that way, because they've maybe worked hard, and maybe they've really understood money, they've planned, they've done what they've needed to do, and yet there is that piece, or they inherit money, which is the other aspect. They inherit money, and there's that guilt. So there's still that issue for even when you have money.
Right.
For us,
it's not about the money.
Yeah, yeah. And you just came to that conclusion that I was going to interject something. So that's exactly right. So is it possible that the reason people are not talking about money in their relationships is because it's not about the money?
Right, exactly.
Right. So if it's not about the money, what is it about?
But then it becomes about the money. You know, and you have an argument and a problem, the money suddenly flows back into it. And you were saying, Dr. Eadie, that you know, people, either man or the woman, they hide things, they hide money things, or they hide stuff. That's not a very good idea, is it? I mean, it's if you're getting married, or you completely have everything open, how do they get that open dialogue going? Because, you know, they want to keep their stuff, and they want to keep their stuff, and it, you know, becomes an argument.
Yeah. Were you going to say something too?
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to share something for my life. I was just reminded, after my first divorce, I had this incredible relationship with a woman. She was actually a therapist out of Boulder, and I loved her probably more than any other woman except maybe my first wife when I first fell in love with her. And what was interesting is that I was already in the modality where I was gambling big time. And I was making lots of money. I mean, I was making so much money, it's crazy. And we were in a relationship for a whole year, and all the way through the whole year, she wanted to know about my money situation, and she wanted to have me disclose how much money I was making and where it was going, and I refused. I refused because I had a secret, and my secret was I needed the money because I'm gambling, and I didn't want to admit to her that I had a problem. So I was hiding it, and the reason I didn't want her to see my checkbook and how much money I made is because of this secret. And ultimately, the relationship didn't work out, and I'm not surprised now why it didn't.
I wanted to speak up and say something that I thought of when you were talking about increasing empowerment and ability to talk about money, Dr. Eadie, is that it could be like a sign of growth for our entire society and maybe around the world that we quit giving so much power to organizations and institutions, governments, and like boards of directors. They just like rubber stamp, and all the shareholders don't even know what's going on, and they just keep giving over their power. I think a rising of consciousness can come out of this dialogue about more openness of personal finances, then becomes more openness about societal finances, and an increased sense of responsibility of everybody, because it is our responsibility, and what we got is a reflection of all of us, not just others. It's all of us. We create what we have. But
we once again have to be careful, because there is that fine line where people come away feeling like a victim of the government, of the board of directors.
And I'm saying this takes us past that.
I hope so. I think a lot of people are stuck there right now in that victim
we're saying that women feel less as a victim and are more empowered and don't rely on the traditional man for their livelihood. I'm saying then on a level of society, we all become more empowered, male or female, because we give a lot away, and we if that's the case, then we need to stop that and grow up. So I'm taking it as a sign, a good sign. I put a positive spin on almost everything. So that's the way I'm looking at this.
I wanted to go back.
Are you saying that we need to regulate the amount of money people can make, so that some of the CEOs are not making
not at all.
$2 million a month? What are we saying?
No, not at all. Not at all. But I think there's a lot of shareholders that they don't participate. They're supposed to be participating. They turn the power over to a board of directors, and then the board of so on. I don't want to get too much into that. It's just that if we take more responsibility, we empower ourselves, whether on a personal level or on a societal level.
Yes, I agree.
Well, knowledge is a great thing. If you know what's going on and what's happening, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. So I wanted to mention something about Dr. Eadie. She has this interesting, it's one of her tools that she's using in her practice, and I actually took a test. So I wanted to, but before I tell you my result of the test, I want Dr. Eadie to explain to our viewers just a little bit. The test is about developing your primary money type. Just say something about this little test, how it works, and why do you have it on your website?
Okay. Well, it's exciting because what it does is it kind of helps to put that puzzle together. So the money quiz it's about archetypes. And archetypes are our patterns. So what it helps us to do is see underneath what are some of those patterns that are operating us that we are not conscious of. So any score 5 and above is conscious. Any score 4 and below is unconscious. So it's a game. You can play it. However, it has that magic quality to it, and it's really very powerful. It helps us to look at patterns and to understand those patterns and to begin to shift and change them.
And where can we find this?
It's on
our website.
On
It's
your
on my
On our
website?
website.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool.
I took mine too, and I wanna hear a little bit, just like Steve. I wanna hear what mine is a little bit about
Okay, so
too.
yeah, but I'll go
Me
first.
too.
I'll go first.
Oh,
All
Oh,
right.
but
So
Steve wants to go first.
so I may have not written everything down. Now that I'm hearing you talking about it, Dr. Edie, that you may want to know. The only thing I wrote down is what is my primary money type, and it is the magician.
Yeah,
And I
thought
had 13 items after it. So what? Can you explain what that means? The
Okay.
magician.
Okay, so Jim, what was yours?
The magician.
I haven't got mine back yet. I don't know what mine is. I have no idea.
Okay.
Kill two birds. We can kill two birds at the same time here.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So the magician is what we all hope to reach. That place financially where we're balanced. We're balanced between the physical world and the spiritual world. And we bring that into what we do in our finances and our relationships. So that's our goal, to reach that part of the evolution into our finances and into ourselves, basically. So the magician is where we hope to reach, and congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, you guys. That's
Right.
great.
Jamie, we're going to take ours and see what
We
happens.
are. We're going to. I want.
I have finally arrived. Thank you.
Yay.
There's another piece also. So what was your lower score? Because that's what you're conscious of. That's operating you consciously. However, there are some other issues, and you could tell from your score, anything that was below 4, those are operating unconsciously. And
Yeah.
they can come in and trip you up. They can trip
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't remember
there were
the low
There were
ones.
3, 4 of those. Yeah, I
I'll
had
go
3,
back
4
and
of
look.
those.
Yeah, good.
All right, so
Sounds like
I will.
a wonderful tool, though.
I will share that
It
with you.
seems like it'd be a great place to start the conversation.
Yeah.
You have a lot to work with as soon as you get started, it looks like to me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So what
amazing
it does is helps people feel comfortable. It's a little quiz, it's a game. However, you really get to see an individual and what's operating them and what's keeping them stuck in their finances. It's an excellent tool. Deborah Price and her Money Magic book she wrote, she developed that, and I have her authority to use it on the website.
Yeah,
Fabulous.
it's a great tool. Yeah, we should all take it and talk about it some more.
Okay.
Yeah.
When Dr. Edie decides to join our cast, we can really pick it apart.
There's a question out there about the, the housing and the dilemma we're going through with foreclosures, short sales, and everything else. It's putting a lot of families and husbands and wife in a spin. What advice can you give to our audience out there about how they can sort of get this whole thing a little bit away from them and sort of try to live a little bit of a normal life? Because there's a big dilemma out there. And I've met many, many families that are really sort of this big problem. And it's a money problem because it just basically comes down to money.
Right. Well, it's more than about money, although that's the manifestation for it.
Yes.
And what I recommend to a lot of the couples, because for the most part, many of them can't afford counseling or coaching, money coaching. So for them to get financial counseling, they should go to some of the agencies, the nonprofit agencies, and for them to make sure that those agencies are accredited, that the counselors that they work with are accredited counselors, because there's a lot of fly-by-night agencies out there. And those agencies can really support them in the foreclosure process, find alternatives, because there's a wealth of information that people don't know about. So educating themselves and having, like we started out, being able to tap into that support that we need, that helps, saying, yes, let me receive, Jamie, like you said, I need to receive something now.
Yeah.
So those, and I have a lot of resources that I can share with you all, a lot of the agencies that provide that counseling for individuals.
What is your website?
www.coachinginspiration.com.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
it's actually on our intro, and it will be also on our outro, so
Okay.
people can easily get access to that. But I wanted to just pick up a shining jewel that I think I dropped earlier. And that shining jewel for me is, yes, we got all excited about the fact that Jim and I are magicians, and that's really our consciousness in terms of our finances. But I'm actually more interested in the stuff that has the possibility of tripping me up. And that's the jewel. And that's the stuff that we all need to discover for ourselves, because it's once we become conscious about money, that's fantastic, but we're not always conscious. I'm not always conscious. I mean, I go back and forth. And it would be good to know for me, so I want to have this conversation with you in the future about those things that would really make the difference in terms of how I handle myself when my subconscious wants to trip me up. What do you think about that?
And absolutely, that's why I mentioned it. It's so important because we are not always conscious. And there are things that we do kind of a knee-jerk reaction to, and those are the unconscious times. So I totally agree. Everybody take the test, and we can talk about it a little bit more. I'll share with you mine, where I'm at, and sometimes depending where you are. But I want to address one important issue, and I think it's so important that we said it's not about money, and it isn't. What it is about is relationship.
Yes.
And it's our relationship to ourselves
Yes.
and our relationship
Yes.
to others. So,
Yes, absolutely. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, thank you. That's very, very powerful.
Wonderful.
That's
Yeah.
very, very powerful. So let's see. So here's the thing. So we all know that this broadcast is like going out to potentially 600,000 people in Denver, but it's also being streamed on the internet. And once it's in the ether, I believe that all 7 billion people on the planet have access to it if they wish to. I mean, everybody has their antennas, and they'll pick up whatever frequency they are tuned in. So who knows how many people will hear this, but I would make a request of you, Dr. Edie, is see if you could summarize this conversation we had about money. And this has been an incredible show. And I also wanted the viewers to know that the entire cast has chosen powerfully to work behind the scenes with all of our personal finances this season, season 3. And it is a very powerful conversation because look what's happening out there in the world. So I'm very excited about it. And this is really, it's kind of interesting because this is our second episode and we're already hitting it right on about having this opening of a conversation. And this has been an incredible experience for me. I don't know about you guys, the cast,
Yes,
but you can speak
absolutely.
for yourself. It's been an incredible opening for
Oh,
me
it's incredible, yeah.
of the conversation that we all need to have with ourselves and with our closest relationships that we have, with our families or within our friends. So to me, it's very powerful. So what I wanted to make sure that we leave the viewers with is, can you just summarize it into just one sentence or one paragraph of what is it that really people should be doing or paying attention to in terms of changing their mindset if their money conversation isn't getting them the result that they want?
I saw, and I shared this with you, this movie called I Am. And it's not a movie, it's a documentary. And in the documentary, the question is posed to what's wrong with the world and how can we change it? So I think that this is such an important question for us to ask. Not so much what's wrong, but what is it that's operating me? What is happening to me in my finances? And go deeper into what is happening for me in my relationship to myself. What are the things that I need to improve? Because when we start to look deeper into ourselves and move forward and understand ourselves, we will look at the different aspects like finances and all of the different aspects to our lives, and we'll begin to heal those. But not until we ask that question, what is it that I need to do? How can I grow myself deeper? How can I begin to shift? And I really support people in getting the help that they need, whether it's therapy, whether it's a coach, whether it's your pastor. And it may start, the conversation may start about money. And it's important to get those things out of the way. If you need some financial therapy, if you need financial counseling, get them out of the way so you can get to the real cause of the issue.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we're actually running out of time, and many thanks to all of our viewers, of course, and our guest, Dr. Edie, as well as the entire cast, the crew behind the glass. And I just want to remind everybody that the more you vote on our shows, the more it's being played on channel 56, 57, and 219. And also, I want to make sure that everybody engages with us on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Living Consciously TV. And I love you all, and we will see you again and have a great experience again next week, same place, same time. Thank you all.